So, friends, Donald Trump and Pam Bondi have taken gaslighting to ridiculous new lows. Wait until you hear about a complaint that Pam Bondi had one of her flunkies at the Department of Justice file against the chief judge of federal district court in Washington, D.C. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Attorney General Pam Bondi just had her chief of staff file a complaint regarding something they claim the chief judge of federal district court in Washington, D.C. said. The first question is, why would Pam Bondi's chief of staff file this kind of a complaint? Well, maybe it's because Pam Bondi fired the top ethics official at the Department of Justice. Because, who needs any oversight of the ethical practices of Bondi and company? So she had her chief of staff file this complaint. And what does the complaint allege the chief judge of federal district court in Washington, D.C. to have said? That is Judge James Jeb Boasberg. Get this. The complaint alleges that Judge Boasberg said he had concerns that the Trump administration might violate federal court orders. Shocking, I know. What outrageous misconduct for somebody to articulate they have concerns about the Trump administration possibly defying federal court orders. Friends, before we go to the new reporting about this new gaslighting by Bondi and company, we have to talk about this complaint. We have to evaluate it against the backdrop of what Trump and company have been doing in federal courtrooms all around the country, from coast to coast. Here is a new deep dive piece that was recently published by the Washington Post. Headline: Trump officials accused of defying 1 in 3 judges who ruled against him. Trump. A comprehensive analysis of hundreds of lawsuits against Trump policies shows dozens of examples of defiance, delay, and dishonesty, which experts say pose an unprecedented threat to the U.S. legal system. And that article begins: President Donald Trump and his appointees have been accused of flouting courts in a third of the more than 160 lawsuits against the Trump administration, in which a judge has issued a substantive ruling, a Washington Post analysis has found, suggesting widespread noncompliance with America's legal system. Plaintiffs say Justice Department lawyers and the agencies they represent are snubbing rulings, providing false information, failing to turn over evidence, quietly working around court orders, and inventing pretexts to carry out actions that have been blocked. Judges appointed by presidents of both parties have often agreed. None have taken punitive action to try to force compliance, however, allowing the administration's defiance of orders to go on for weeks or even months in some instances. The Post examined 337 lawsuits filed against the administration since Trump returned to the White House and began a rapid-fire effort to reshape government programs and policy. As of mid-July, courts had ruled against the administration in 165 of the lawsuits. The Post found that the administration is accused of defying or frustrating court oversight in 57 of those cases, almost 35%. And friends, here's a sampling of some of what the federal court judges are saying about Trump, his administration, and his DOJ. Defendants, Trump and company, have failed to respond in good faith, and their refusal to do so can only be viewed as willful and intentional noncompliance, said U.S. District Judge Paula Sines. There is reason to believe that the defendants, Trump and company, are thumbing their nose at both this court and the Court of Appeals, said U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson. It appears that OMB sought to overcome a judicially imposed obstacle without actually ceasing the challenged conduct. The court can think of few things more disingenuous, said U.S. District Judge Lauren L. Ali Khan. And friends, just one more thing before we turn to this absurd complaint that they filed against the judge. The Washington Post, as part of its deep dive expose into the unethical conduct in court of Trump and company, they published a helpful visual, a chart, a graph of sorts, tracking the conduct of Trump and company in court. How Trump officials are allegedly defying the courts, not complying with court orders, 38 cases, giving false or misleading information, 9 times, withholding evidence, 5 times, creating pretext to go around court orders, 5 times. Okay, friends, against that backdrop of what Trump, his administration, and his Department of Justice have actually been doing in federal court, let's turn to the reporting about their new complaint regarding something that Judge Boasberg said. This from Politico. Headline, Trump administration escalates its war with the courts, this time targeting Judge Boasberg. The Trump administration escalated its battle Monday to cast as rogue partisans federal judges who have blocked President Donald Trump's priorities, this time taking aim at James Boasberg, the chief judge of the U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced her office had filed a misconduct complaint against Boasberg over comments reported recently in right-leaning news outlets that Boasberg made at a meeting of judges in March with Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts in attendance. This social media post by Bondi on X, quote, "These comments have undermined the integrity of the judiciary, and we will not stand for that," Bondi wrote on X. That's right. Only the Department of Justice and the Trump administration will undermine the judiciary by defying court orders early and often. Pam Bondi apparently won't stand for anybody else undermining the judiciary. I guess that's the exclusive province of Pam Bondi's Department of Justice. Are you fucking kidding me, friends, with apologies for the F-bomb? This is gaslighting at its most absurd. So here is the complaint, and I'm not going to read it to you, but let's have a look at what this complaint alleges Judge Boasberg said. At a judicial conference meeting in March of 2025, Judge Boasberg allegedly expressed concerns that the administration would disregard rulings of federal courts, leading to a constitutional crisis. That is the sum total of what the complaint alleges Judge Boasberg said, that he had a concern that the administration would defy court orders. And it has, and it is, and it likely will continue to do so. This is not judicial misconduct. This is gaslighting at its most absurd. I mean, what will Pam Bondi allege next? Will she file a complaint against Judge Boasberg saying, He wears a bad blonde comb-over and an orange spray-on tan and a red tie that's too long, and he cheats at golf. Gaslighting at its most absurd. And friends, let me finish up with a word about Judge James Jeb Boasberg. He was a prosecutor's prosecutor, and he's a judge's judge. And I know, because I worked with him when he was a federal homicide prosecutor together with me at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office. I supervised him when I was chief of homicide, and he was prosecuting murder cases day in and day out. I worked cases with him. I tried a particularly difficult, emotional, gut-wrenching murder case, double homicide involving an elderly brother and sister who lived together, living out their golden years, and they were murdered. They were butchered in their own home. I tried that double homicide case with Judge Boasberg. James Boasberg was first appointed as a judge by President George W. Bush. Thereafter, he was appointed as a judge by President Barack Obama. James Boasberg is somebody who has always been respected on both sides of the aisle. And he's deeply respected in D.C. criminal justice circles, which makes this absurd complaint filed by Bondi and company all the more offensive. And I suspect it will be dismissed, discarded, out of hand. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.